In the previous episode, I visited Chesterfield Reef on my way to Bundaberg in Queensland as my port of entry to Australia. Here I visit places in Bundaberg and also drive down towards Brisbane to see friends and take a backroad detour on the return trip. The sailing was all pretty straightforward, taking advantage of a high pressure south of the route that generated southerly winds backing around to the northeast, with just a few squalls along the way. Eventually, I had to negotiate the shipping routes along that coast, as shown on AIS, and finally was close enough to pick up the AIS signals from the Break Sea Spit buoy at the end of Sandy Spit, the empty square, and Lady Elliot Island Light, the house symbol. One of the many pleasures of the South Pacific tropics, from French Polynesia to Vanuatu, are pamplemousse, a sweet kind of grapefruit which only get better with age, and when they look the worst on the outside, they are the best inside. I would eat half of one each morning, and they lasted me from Vanuatu to Bundaberg.
It's Thursday, 27th of June, and I haven't filmed much this passage from Chesterfield Reef, mostly because until yesterday it was all much the same. Fast, close reaching, then beam reaching, then down broad reaching. It was great fun until yesterday we ran out of wind. It started raining. Eventually I had to motor. We've made it across a couple of shipping lanes, and now we're in Hervey Bay. We're about 10 hours out of Bundaberg, which is our port of entry, our new port of entry in Australia. And I've just turned the engine off because we have a breeze finally right behind us. See the Windex up at the top there, right behind us. So hoist the full main again, jib out, pole to the left to windward, sort of. In the staysail you can barely see underneath there, cranked tight in the center just to try to help the damping, the rolling. It's been a grey, rainy day, the whole day, and it's going to carry on, by the looks of it, for a while. The cool thing is, it is whale season, and I had a humpback come up behind me a while ago, and then in front I had a couple of whales breaching. Yeah, it's great fun. I'm so glad to see them again. Tonga last season was spectacular with the whales. I'm hoping for more here.
Halfway between Vanuatu and Australia, I had changed my port of entry that I had sent to the Australian Border Force before leaving Vanuatu, from Townsville to Bundaberg, to avoid strong conditions forecast further north. And Christina had notified them of this change by email, which you have to do at least 4 days ahead of arrival. You have to give them an ETA, so I said 1 p.m. on Friday, June 28th. But with such good sailing, I arrived on Thursday evening. Without thinking about notifying the ABF, I motored into the well-charted, marked and lit Bundaberg River Harbour and anchored just outside the marina. The next morning I moved into the marina, but had to wait on their quarantine dock until 1 p.m. The 3 officials who visited then were unhappy with me for anchoring out, and spent 2 hours with the immigration guy questioning me about where I had been before arriving, while a customs officer went through the boat searching everywhere. They did not explain anything, but appear to have been looking for drugs. Perhaps a recent major cocaine bust involving a yacht that sailed from Vanuatu with hidden compartments built into the hull, described in this press release, had them on edge. At least there was no charge for this inquisition, but then a biosecurity officer spent almost 2 hours searching the boat and giving me a long talk about termites, charging by the quarter hour for a total of over $400. I was finally allowed into Australia, and the next day, after a brilliant sunrise, set off to explore Bundaberg. First up was a remarkable water tower in the middle of town, built of brick at the turn of the last century, with the walls 4.5 feet thick at the base. Next up was the namesake ginger beer, which I had first encountered in French Polynesia, but which is actually available almost worldwide. Here is the evolution of their stumpy bottle. They had a tasting for the 12 varieties of juices they now sell, and I got a 6-pack of my favorites. Then it was on to their botanic gardens for a stroll, one of the centerpieces being a museum celebrating a local aviation hero, Bert Hinkler, who had flown a tiny plane solo from England to Australia in 1928. Amazingly, a local effort led to the moving of his home in England, brick by brick, to this garden where it was rebuilt.
This was the Japanese garden in Bundaberg. The water just disappears into the rocks here. I'm not sure whether it's recycled. I think so. Otherwise, maybe it goes to the ponds at the bottom there. It flows through these pools in manicured bushes and trees along this lovely path. And yeah, it's a really pretty, tranquil garden. And it's a Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock, and nobody here. It's pretty cool. Christina would certainly enjoy this. There's some good-fashioned bamboo, these various features that are typical of Japanese gardens, and then an entranceway here. Here's a bunch of ginger, just at the Bundaberg ginger beer place, brewery, and here's an entrance gate, typical of Japanese places. Some sort of house, I'm not sure what that's about. And anyway, yeah, lovely place, all to myself.
As usual, I enjoyed the birds in the garden, some of which were even willing to have their photos taken. The weather forecast was for no wind for 2 days, so I got a rental car and set off on a road trip south on Highway A1 along the Sunshine Coast. First stop was Malulaba, where Danish friends I met in Tonga, Sophie and Casper, had their beautiful boat Velodia for a refurbishing before selling her and returning home. Then it was on through Brisbane to the Gold Coast and Surfers Paradise, where I visited a high school friend, Frank, who had a prominent ophthalmology clinic there, and who I had not seen in 50 years. I took back roads on the return drive the next day and enjoyed lots of good scenery, including a lovely variety of native pines in a range of hills and eucalyptus forest where it belongs. A little town with the unfortunate name of Blackbutt had done its best to improve its fortunes, and after passing a perfectly named creek, I came to a pond with a group of pelicans. It's a little hunting circle of pelicans here. Almost every time they go down, they come up with a fish. It's amazing.
Little village is alive with these white cockatoos. It's not obvious why, although some of them seem to like these 2 palms here. But they're all over. A whole bunch over there. They're even up on the cell tower here. This is my rental car for this 2-day trip. These guys are so noisy. It's amazing. Australia is known for its road trains, and this magnificent, relatively short version with a Kenmore tractor was carrying firewood all the way from the Northern Territory to Canberra. At one point, the road that had been quite straight changed to sharp curves, and there must have been a few motorcycle accidents there. The last town before Bundaberg was Childers, a remarkably quaint place with typical old Australian homes with wraparound porches. This is the cutest town that I found in Australia so far. It's called Childers. It's got a great system. The main road goes down the middle, and then there's a little side road with diagonal parking that you can go straight back out into the main road, and then usual parallel parking over here, and just endless little old shops. The Hive, charming. And yeah, all sorts of, I mean, look at this, books, a bookshop, amazing. And look at the lovely old buildings here, all the old structures on top. It's just a great little town. I mean, it's been turned into a bit of a tourist town, but it's still really, they've done a superb job. Look at it all the way along here. And then this whole walkway here has these mosaics. This one's a barramundi, a little bit unusual with metal, but then all these mosaics of various kinds built into the sidewalk. It's just gorgeous. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. What a place. I like it.
Here are a sample of them. Really nicely done and amazing to have them embedded in the sidewalk, along with some larger mosaics at each corner like these.
While walking around Childers, I came across this remarkable park which commemorates the fact that Canuck people were brought from the southern seas, either voluntary or involuntary, to this area, which is called Isis, and put to work on the sugar plantations that the European farmers had started. It's these totem poles have accounts of some of this, and here's one where you can see the countries if I go slowly. Fiji, New Hebrides, now Vanuatu, New Caledonia, Solomon Islands, and they were all brought to the Queensland coast, and especially here to Childers. And these totem poles tell the story of their life before they were brought here, and then subsequently their life here in the plantations. And yeah, it's really a remarkable story that I had no idea about. And then walking up here, there's amazing set of sculptures here that describe their involvement. Look at this. This is what they were given. These are their rations here. Amounts of food per, I'm not sure, daily. And then amounts of clothing, etc. And some of the housing. And then here are these sculptures of them working in the sugarcane fields. Back then, cutting the cane. And you see, here's a family. You can see they're black. They're Melanesians, black curly hair, and doing all the work in the fields, cutting the cane before they started burning the cane instead, and collecting it and taking it and putting it on the little cane trains to be taken to the mills. And all of this park, which was only recently established, is on this main street, which is really quite spectacular the way they have the diagonal parking on it and so on, called, of all things, Churchill Street. Ay, ay, ay. It's not often you get stopped by a sugarcane train. Look at that. Very cool.
I bought the latest edition of this classic guide to sailing the Coral Coast all the way to Torres Strait, and benefited enormously from it for the next month. I had hoped to visit the offshore islands called Lady Elliot or Lady Musgrave that are snorkeling spots, but with strong winds in the forecast 2 days hence, instead decided to sail north along the coast.